sometimes we take snapshots, and I want to take a snapshot of something that happened about 4 or 5 years ago that tells a really interesting thing about culture, and I want you to help me. It's interactive. So first slide, I want you to help. This is a Kids' Choice Award, and I want you to help me. I get to do it, right? There we go. Kids' Choice Award. I want you to help me. 4 or 5 years ago, these are elementary age children. I want you to guess, turn to a friend and tell, which one do you think they chose favorite movie? Okay, so let's see. Karate Kid, all right? Pretty easy, okay? Next slide is favorite movie actress. Okay, let's see. Miley Cyrus. That's just scary to me, right? Scary to me. Okay, next one. Favorite movie actor. Okay, let's see. Johnny Depp. All right? But think about it. Think about all the children's movies he's in, right? Right? So you can. Which one? Pirates. Well, what else? Willy Wonka. You can go on, all right? Next one. Favorite animated movie. Okay. Despicable Me. Let me just say this to you. Sometimes we as adults remember what we like. Right? And this is what kids liked. Favorite, now, I don't know what this person is in this category either, but okay. Which one do you think? Okay, let's stop for a second. Who knows 4 or 5 years ago what was the song she was known for, and it was not Fireworks, okay? So there we go. So let's think about this. Elementary age children. Let's stop for a second. Elementary age children. Anyone having a little problem right now? So we think about this, and this is what we talk about culture. What the problem is today is culture is so much around us, like the air that we breathe. We become so comfortable with it, we don't realize the impact that it's having on our children. We don't realize the impact. Next one, male singer. Well, think about back then. Do we have, okay, yeah, so let's just move on from that one. Music group. Now, if you'll see the first one up there, it's Big Time Rush, Disney show, Black Eyed Peas. And I want to say in Texas, we always have to say Black Eyed Peas and cornbread. They go together, just the way that goes. Jonas Brothers, Lady Antebellum. So don't choose for you, choose for the children, okay? All right, so here we go. Okay, stop for a second. Anyone feeling uncomfortable again? Because if you think about what's going on, these are children who are saying, and you think about this, and this is the thing with culture. Culture is about access. And from the very beginning today, the world around us has unparalleled access to the children in our lives. And when I grew up, I'm gonna be honest, where I grew up, we had 3 channels, right? 3 channels. I did not have we called them car phones even way back then, where everything was limited. But today, when we think about what's going on with children, our homes, our cars are like these permeable kind of things, and culture just flows in. The only people I really knew back then, other than the 3 or 4 people on TV that the shows we watched, were the people in my community. But now the community is the world, because everything out there can come inside our homes, our cars. At my church, we built a parking garage at my church because we had no place to park people. We built it underground. And I used to joke that when parents get in their car, that we didn't have to have parking lights because DVD players come on immediately when they get in the car. Because even in our cars, we are abdicating our influence to someone else. Even in our way home from church, we are abdicating our influence. Let's look at the next one. The next one is favorite song. You would know that, right? For that time period. Be Baby, yeah. Okay, favorite actress, real quick. Selena Gomez, very powerful even today. Okay, favorite TV show. iCarly. What is missing from iCarly? Parents. Yeah. So you think about what's going on with children at that time period and today. We have changing models of reference for behavior, for language, for families. Even when we're living our lives the way we feel God has called us to, the fact is, when we allow influence and access to anybody in any type of situation, in our homes with our grandchildren, in our schools, we are saying that it is okay. Because when we are silent, we are endorsing it. Where there's silence, there's consent. And we are consenting to it. I'm going to go back. Sorry, I'm going to kill you on this. Favorite cartoon? SpongeBob kills almost every year. Phineas and Ferb was close. Okay, books. Let me say this to you. What would be the ones today we would say would be powerful ones? What would be the ones today? Harry Potter, not today. We would have what? Hunger Games would be most powerful. When you think of children, Hunger Games would be the most powerful today. The other one if you look at the Rick Riordan series, where he explores 3 different pagan pantheons of gods. The problem is, in those texts, powerfully influential in the lives of children, the only time Christians are presented, it's always in a negative light. Extremely negative. And so, boys and girls, and in the last 2 series in the Rick Riordan series, you have issues with elementary age children where a child is coming out to other children. And again, these reference points become so comfortable. When I moved to Dallas 12 years ago, 13 years ago, we have horses. We like to live outside a city. And when we moved to that area, we moved to an area and we bought a house with 5 acres. We brought our horses. And when we were moving in, I didn't realize that just not far from us was an interstate. And I could hear the cars on the interstate, but I didn't notice that when we were looking at the house. And it drove me crazy. I couldn't hear it in the house, but every time I'd go out, I could hear the cars and trucks on the interstate. Drove me crazy. When we moved from the house 10 years later, guess what I no longer heard? Was it because the volume went down? The federal government decided to move the interstate? No. It was because what? Yeah, that's what we do. We watch that show, we listen to that song, we don't think about, as those impressions are being made, we are creating a world of endorsement, of acceptance, of consent. And that's what happens. Next slide. Okay, this is an interesting one. So what do you think? So you have 3 children. At many schools today, public schools, they will not use this because of what? The language of the songs. And actually, the same thing's true. The Just Dance 4 is still, every time they do that, it's the most popular. You think about this, these are elementary age children. So what is culture? And I'm going to leave up the slide most of the time. Here's the thing I want you to think about culture, because here's the thing. Culture is shared, learned. It's a system of beliefs and attitudes. Culture is what's developing. It's learned, it's shared, it's patterned. And this is the thing we're doing. As we watch those shows, as we talk, as we observe people, children are bringing those patterns into their lives, and it becomes the acceptable way to act, to think, to behave, to believe. And we're constructing that together. And this is the whole thing. If you think about it, it's those patterns that become acceptable. That's the thing. If you think about it, when our children say something that and it's not like the way we talk, it's because they've seen the pattern or heard the pattern somewhere else. And how do we engage with that pattern? It's mutually constructed, it's symbolic. And the last one I want to say is it's internalized. This is the whole thing, is what they see, what all these things that happen, they become internalized. And then it becomes replicated. It becomes a part of that process. Now, I want to put this verse up here. We're going to come back to this verse at the end because Scripture speaks to culture. Here's what it says. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, walking around life, place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit in it without even thinking. See what Paul is saying to us? See what God is saying to us? Be careful about the culture around you because you become so comfortable that you fit into it without even thinking. So let's talk about the children today. Here's an interesting thing today is we live in a world where we seek to protect children. We want to make them safe, but I would argue that they're not really any safer than they were years ago. I mean, we have laws. I mean, today we talk about we have to have options at McDonald's, right? For fries. If you think about it, and I remember this, here's the funny thing. When I was growing up in my mom's big green Impala, when I would ride on the back, this is the only thing that was keeping me safe. Right? And on those vinyl seats, when she'd hit the brakes, we'd go skidding off the side of it. Even like this, it was like those little chihuahuas that bob up and down because we would slide around on there. But today, you know, my niece is 5'2" and she's still in a car seat. Right? I'm surprised they don't have me snapped into a car seat because I'm so short. But we create all these rules, and you know what? The baby bed changes. I'm not against them, but you know, now we have to make sure everything is just perfect. But here's the thing, and I agree it should be perfect, but here's the problem. What happens is we create those rules, and then we abdicate our role. Because, and I wonder, is the next law going to be that when you're carrying a baby, 2 people have to walk along beside you? And I'm not against those laws, but the problem is we begin to rely on laws, and here's the thing, it takes a responsible adult. We can create laws after laws after laws after laws, but the problem is, in the end, it is a responsible adult that makes a difference in a child's life. It is a responsible adult that snaps a child in. It is a responsible adult who raises the baby bedside. It is a responsible adult. In every situation, we can't ignore it is a responsible adult that makes a difference. And this is what I say to parents because here's what they do. They say, oh, that's a kid's channel. By whose estimate? You know what? We become comfortable that what the world says is appropriate for our children. And this is why I say to parents, always know about the movies your children are watching. Always, and I would say to you, have you watched, are you engaged in what children are watching? Are you engaged what children are reading? Be engaged in the world, because the problem is we don't know how to help them when we are unaware. Okay? Because the world begins to get different as we get older and we become more out of touch. The next one is they're connected but not in relationship. And this is true in American culture today. And I know you're the same way. I've got my cell phone, I've got my iPad, I've got all these things. I'm so connected that when sometimes on Facebook I see this, you can tell where people are around the world. That's just creepy to me. I just want to say that, and I'm a late adopter to Facebook. I only started it because of my kids, so I can keep up with what's going on my kids. But that's the crazy thing. But we create this world, and look at this. If you look at this will be the most this generation will be the most globally connected generation. Some people are arguing that this is the last American generation, because children will increasingly be global citizens, not American citizens. And because we are so shaped immediately by what's going on in the world that it just creates a change in identity for children. You think about this, children spend 8 hours a day, 53 hours a week connected to some form of technology. They should be getting health care benefits for that, right? I mean, that's almost a full-time job. more than a full-time job. But here's the problem is, while they are texting, they are listening to music while they're looking at the TV, and so it's really more like 11 hours, if you think about it. I find this true in my classroom. I have to say to students, college-age students, I come in at the beginning and I said, now here's the thing, guys. I said, when we're in class today, if your technology, I love technology, we'll use it. I'll tell you, get your phones out and search for something. But here's the thing is, if we're not using your technology, I need it to be put away. If you're taking notes, that's fine, but your phone needs to go away. And here's the problem. And some of you are just like this. Where's my phone? And you know that thing, your phone gives you kudos, right? Because when you hear that ding, you think, oh, I'm so important. Someone is sending me a message, right? And so it releases those endorphins. So I'm so important. Oh, someone sent me something. It's the same way. And I say this to students. Sometimes I say to them, they try to do that lap texting. And I'll say, why are you staring at your lap? And why are you smiling at your lap? And so it only takes one or two times for them to realize, I better put that phone away because Dr. Sanders is going to say something. I said, give it up for an hour, give it up for 50 minutes. But here's the thing, it makes us feel like we're connected, but we're not in a relationship. And that's the thing in children's homes today. They come home and they go to their rooms where they have a TV, where they have a DVD, Blu-ray, where they have gaming systems, where even some children have refrigerators. I mean, it's almost like the Hampton Inn, right? All they have to do is come down and get the complimentary breakfast and go back to their room. And if you look at this, but here's the problem. Well, parents say, but I'm giving my children a cell phone. I want to stay in contact with them. Yeah, but the problem is you're giving them to be in contact with people you don't want them to be in contact with. But research is showing us, you see several documented research projects that show by 5th grade, most elementary age children have seen some form of pornography. And it all becomes this issue of access. What kind of access? Can we isolate them from the world? I don't believe we can. But I do believe we ought to control the access points, the kind of access. And it's not just them reaching out. It's those, because here's the thing. When technology is reaching out, it is attempting to buy, sell, or create a connection for its own purpose. And we have to be aware how vulnerable our children are. Inclusive without endorsement. This is the thing I'm watching on college campuses because I'm working with young adults and I'm finding more and more that even very strong Christian students have a really hard time understanding this idea of being accepting and balancing endorsing. And they really struggle this. And I want to say to you, this becomes the critical thing for us as parents, us as adults, that we continue to talk about why we believe what we believe. What's God's plan for families? What's God's plan for sexuality? What's God's plan for decision making? We have to continue to talk about those kinds of things and live the example for our children, or they get confused and they begin to accept and include other kinds of behaviors and choices. I have those conversations almost weekly with college students who are struggling to figure out, well, Dr. Sanders, I want to be inclusive. I want to be accepting. I said, all those things, accepting and loving people is exactly what Jesus has called us to do, but he's also called us to live a lifestyle that is an example. Okay? And that is the challenge for us. But here's the problem. It comes down to discipline. I'll talk about this in my discipline conference later on. We live in a world where we want it, and we want it now. I mean, you do the same thing. You've got your phone, and you're looking something up, and when that screen doesn't load immediately, what do? Right? Right? So let's don't just talk about kids. They've done a little study that talks about people who are fast clickers are also crazy drivers. Because we get the red light. Oh my gosh, this red light's like 30 minutes long. That person's driving too slow. But we're in this culture and we want it and we want it now. I'm going to slip on to this one. Yeah. We want it and we want it now. And here's the thing I want to say to you, that boys and girls, we need to think about discipline. Discipline and discipleship are connected. They're the same word. And when you look in the Greek, it's the word mathetes. It's where we get the word mathematics. Mathematics at its basic form is a recognition of patterns. 2 plus 2 is, And this is the thing, we have to teach children. That's what Jesus did with his disciples for 3 years. He taught them patterns of behavior, patterns of speech, patterns of thinking. And what happens in our children's world today is that these things are coming into a world, they're going into their rooms, they're separated from us. And this is the thing I say to parents, pull your family together as much as you can. No DVD players in the car unless you're going an hour. Okay? All right? Build community in the car. Meals together, eat together. Eating together shows a strong connection with the family, getting them to eat together, to have conversations. And the other thing is no media in the bedrooms. Put all media in family space for accountability, for awareness. And this is the other thing I say to parents. Watch the same shows your kids are watching. I love reading. Matter of fact, my kids and I still read the same books. They'll say, what are you? I'll say to them, I have a daughter who's a lawyer. She's an assistant district attorney. A daughter who's a nurse and a son who's graduating in a month. So we're about to get at least the undergrad part finished at our house. But I'll say to you, what are you reading? Because I want to know what my 23-year-old is reading where I can have a conversation with him. Okay? So that I can stay connected with him. So what did you think about that? Well, how do you, and it's this opportunity to have conversation. One night years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe not that long, I'm going to say this, I love superhero stuff. I'm going to just say this. I do love superhero stuff. I'll be right there to watch superhero stuff. And so we were watching Kids Channel, and there was the new Super Friends, which aren't so new now, but there were the new Super Friends. I was watching with my son, and there was Supergirl, and Supergirl said to one of the other people in the Super Friends, she said that she wanted to cop a feel. And I mean, we're talking an animated show. And I turned to my son and I said, what did Supergirl just say? He said, I'm not discussing it because it will lead to more conversation about this. I said, do you know what that means? He said, I'm not discussing that with you. But here's the thing is, if we don't know what they're watching and what they're connected with, then how are we going to have conversations about it? How are we going to guide them along the way? Here's the thing. If you look at this, I put this up there. And here's the thing. I did this. Sometimes they let me speak in chapel, not very often at my school, but sometimes they do. But the other day, I had this very conversation with our students, our students at East Texas Baptist University in chapel. I said, now I want you to look at this. There are 2 different clocks up there. And actually, when I talked to them, I stood down front and I have a wind-up clock that chimes the hour in my office because it keeps me on schedule because I need to hear it. And so it chimes the hour so I know, I've got to be in another meeting. So I have that clock there. And then I asked him, so what's the difference? Which one is digital, which one with analog? I was just asking. And they looked and we talked about, well, that's a digital one. That one from your office is a what? Analog. And it's not that one's better than the other, but I want to prove this point. So I want you to think about this point. I think the shift from analog to digital marks a change in the way we look at the world. On a digital clock, what do you see? You see now. Right? Now. On the analog, you see the past, the present, and the future. And this is one of the challenges we live with in America today, is we live in a world today that we're only worried about now. We're not worried about, they made those decisions in the past, that didn't matter. It's just now. Or I don't really want to worry about that down the road. And you know, they've done that little study for years with the marshmallow with preschoolers where they put that marshmallow. Have you seen that test? You ought to go out and look at the YouTube video of it. It's been going on forever, where they watch if children can make it the 5 minutes and not eat the marshmallow. They track them years later, and guess what they are? They finish college at a higher rate. They do better in school. They manage money better. There are all these kind of things that they do. Because here's the thing it comes down to. People who can delay gratification, who can look to the future and look to the past and realize that today is connected, make better choices. And that's what we have to do with children. We have to help them. And sometimes it's painful. And guess what? Sometimes it's painful for me. And I want to say to you, the reason parents want to live now is because they don't want to worry about the future either. Right? They don't want to stop what they're doing to help their child learn a lesson because it inconveniences them. I was with a mom in the store one time. Our kids don't like to go to the store with me because I say things to people I ought to keep mind my own business. So there was this kid just pitching a fit in the store, and the child wanted something. And I walked up to the mom, and she said, she looked so embarrassed. And I said, it's okay for him to be unhappy. And she kept saying, if you do it again, we're going to the car. I said, go to the car. Go to the car. But why wouldn't she go to the car? Inconvenience. Go to the car. That's right. And here's the thing, and I'm going to say this in California, and please don't get upset with me, because in Texas we can say it, and that's where I live. But if you draw your gun, you'd better shoot. Now, I'm not talking about carrying guns. You understand what I'm saying? Because, I'm not getting into that discussion. But I'm saying this, we live in a culture where parents say things and they don't mean it. And what happens is we're guilty at school too, okay? Because we don't have the time to stop and help them learn a lesson. But here's the thing, they don't develop, because the goal of discipline is self-discipline, right? To make right choices when we're not around. That's what Jesus is doing. I'm not going to be with you in a few years. I'm not going to be with you in a few months. I'm going to leave it in your hands. So we have to think about that. And we have to be careful. And this is the other thing we have to be careful. The world is trying to get us to pay and buy. And here's the thing. If we can't get them to make good choices now, how are they going to make it when they have credit cards? How are they going to make it when their body can make a baby? Right? Because you don't magically become self-disciplined. It's going to take key and responsible people connecting with you. Here's the other thing. Here's the thing we find over and over with children. When we talk to children, we talk to young adults, we find that children over and over say that they want to be with their families. I say this to churches over and over, that we have to do more to get parents to spend more time with their children. Now, I want to say this to you, that some studies lately show that parents are spending more time with their children. But my question is it together in the same space, or is it really together? My wife teaches third grade, and she told me this story last week in her third grade classroom. My wife's been teaching for over 30 years in elementary school. And she said to me the other day, we were talking about something, and this girl who is in a Christian home, her mother works for a church, okay? The daughter said, well, there's no, because they were talking about, well, work with your mom and dad on this, work with your grandparents, work through this. And she said, there's no way I'm going to get my mom to work with me on anything because she spends too much time on her social media. And I just thought, a third grader makes what kind of observation? A telling observation about our own self-centeredness as adults. And this is the thing. This is what I said to my students in my teaching class. Actually, it was in my youth and young adult ministry class last semester. I said the scary thing that I've come to the realization of is that when it comes to teaching, it is the teacher who sacrifices the most. Okay? That's not something you want to hear. In parenting, it is the parent. We think about getting the student to sacrifice, but guess what? Because here's our example. In the life of Jesus, the master teacher, who sacrificed the most? He sacrificed it all. And that's the challenge that we have to keep in mind. Technology, we look up there, 71% of children have TVs in their bedroom, 71%. We talk about age compression. When was the last time you tried to go buy clothes for a third grade girl? Yeah, it's hard because here's the thing. We are squeezing out childhood today, and we're forcing children into adolescent clothes, adolescent patterns, and I'm not saying they're appropriate for adolescents. That's just what's happening in their life. But here's the other thing. The second sentence up there, what did that used to say? I've tweaked it a little bit. What did that used to say? It says life imitating art. What did we used to say? Yeah. You know what changed that? The TV. The TV actually changed education. We used to think that children had to have direct experiences to learn something. They had to be in the context with the person. But all of a sudden, when the TV came along, all of a sudden we realized, from a research standpoint, that all children had to do was to see it, to learn it, to incorporate it. And so the TV has discovered this, and this is the reason why shows are setting the pattern. Here's the thing, is because they're setting alternative patterns, alternative families, alternative choices. They're setting all these things in place because what do they know eventually is going to happen? It's going to become the pattern, right? It's going to become acceptable. So we have to think about that. What's the quote by... When you look at the quote by Mary Taylor from MTV, where does she put the responsibility? She says, we're not Little House on the Prairie anymore. The world is different. If parents said you can't watch this and the ratings dropped, maybe we would change things. And here's the thing is, are we going to sacrifice enough to turn that TV show off? Are we going to sacrifice enough not to buy that product? Are we going to sacrifice enough not to go see that movie, even though it sounds really good? Because here's the thing, that's what our children are. Here's how they develop identity. They develop identity by watching us make choices. Okay? It's not what we say. It's when we're watching a show and we say, you know what, we're not going to watch that show. It was a hard thing. I'm going to give you an example. What was the predecessor to Glee? What was the archetype for Glee? What was the thing that started the whole discussion that model developed on TV? It didn't develop on Fox, it developed on another channel. High School Musical. When the media saw that High School Musical was so wildly popular, they moved it to prime time. They tweaked a little bit and they packed it with all the kinds of things that they could impact our children with. And this is what parents, when their kids wanted to start watching it, and all of a sudden it started off, well, it's kind of uncomfortable, but then it started getting into those deeper things. There was the hook. And we as Christians either had to decide, well, we're going to turn it off, we're not going to watch that kind of thing, or you know what, it's okay. That becomes the problem. And the same thing when you're talking to parents about PG, G, PG. It's kind of funny when the secular world says something's PG. What should that say to us? Right? I mean, I'm bad at the movie theater. If I go to see a PG-13 movie, like a superhero movie or something like that, and there'll be like a 5-year-old sitting behind me. And I turn to the parents and say, and my children are like, please don't do this. I said, this is PG-13. Yeah, it won't bother them. Yeah, that's the scary thing. Do you know what I mean? The scary thing is, guess what? It won't bother them, because guess what? It should. They've seen so much violence. They've seen so much sexuality that it's normal. And that's the challenge for us. We get comfortable. And I know this is what parents say. They start with the baby. They get their first baby and that binky falls out of the mouth and they throw it away and get a brand new one, right? And the second baby comes along, the binky falls out, we wash it off and we scald it and we give it back. But the third baby, we just lick it off and we give it to the child. Right? And this is the thing that begins to impact children as they come along, is we have to be careful that we begin to lower our guard and lower our standard because we are busy, because we're distracted, and what they learn to do is accommodate instead of live disciplined lives. I'm gonna leave this up there just so you can see this, and I'm gonna move to, I'm gonna stop right there because I wanna use the remaining part of time. I'm going to stop right on this one. One of the things we have to do as adults is we have to help children have a respect for authority. And this is the issue as a teacher, as a leader. And I want to say to you this is one of my challenges with my own children. I have to be careful because when I talk negative, you remember when I was in school, maybe you were like this. When I was in school, if I was close to getting a spanking at school, guess what? I got a big old spanking at home, right? My dad would say, if you get 3 licks at school, you're getting 6 licks at home, right? Because authority was respected. Today, if a child gets 3 licks at school, we want to go to school and spank the teacher, right? Because our child cannot be wrong. And what we have to do is help parents. This is the thing I say to parents over and over. Be careful how you critique your child's teacher because in reality, you're undermining their authority in your child's life. Go and have a conversation with that. But here's the thing is children tell stories. They would never tell stories that benefit themselves. Right? And that's what I say, that when your child comes and tells you the story, they're going to tell it from an angle that benefits themselves. Right? Yeah. So be careful. Here's the other thing I say to parents. Do not undermine the other parent. Because what you're doing is undermining your authority as parents. And I say this to parents who are divorced. I said, even though you're not husband and wife, you're still mom and dad. And your child needs consistency. They need consistency. So I want to go back to that story at the end. So I told you about Chewy, right? Chewy Jesus number 3, right? So that same session where he says the inappropriate word, but the kids don't know what it is. They think he's just speaking Spanish. They don't hear the inflection in his voice. They don't catch that he said a bad word. And I stopped that day and I thought about it. Was Chewy meaning to say a bad word? No. Here's the thing. It was his wow word. Now, he needed a new wow word, right? He needed another wow word, and we had a conversation about that later on. But here's the same, I'm about to go to, before group time, I'm going to rewind the story just a little bit. Right about 5 minutes before group time, as we were getting ready to transition, right before the whole conversation, on the door there was a knock, and a child came to the door. And I mean, we only had about 30 minutes left in Bible study, maybe 30 minutes. And the parent came to the door, and I opened the door, and I said, "Hi, I'm Mr. Tommy." And the dad said, "Well, this is my son, Brian. And Brian, this is our first time at church." And I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, we have about 30 minutes left, but we're happy to have him." And he said, "Well, we've never been to church before." And so in my mind, guess what I heard? Never been to our church. That's what I heard. So I said, "Well, great." I said, "Well, come on in." And I said, "Brian, I'm Mr. Tommy." And he said, "My mom's dead." And I said, "Wow." And looked up at Dad, and Dad said, "Yes, she died last year, but we're still not over it." And I was thinking, wow, I wouldn't be over it either, right? I wouldn't be over it. And so Dad left, and we had, even in that 5 minutes, some transitional issues with him working with other children, but we worked out. We went to group time. We're doing the God Made story. I'm playing the game to get ready for the Bible story. I'm saying this whole thing about God, this animal and this animal, they're guessing what it is. And so Chewy says the word, I kind of settle that down, and then I'll get my Bible out and I'm about to tell the Bible story. And I start using the phrase, God made this, and God made this, and God made this. And Brian says, hey, who is God? And I stopped for just a second and I said, well, and Chewy jumps in and says, well, he's the one who named his son after me. And I said, Chewy, can I handle this? Oh, you want to handle it? Yes, I want to handle it. So I said to Brian, I said, well, God is the person that made everything. He said, oh, nope, that's not right. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, no person can make anything. I said, yes, you're exactly right. God is not a person. I shouldn't have said that. God is not a person. God is God, and he's been here before anything was made, and he's not a human being. He's God. There's no one like him, and he made everything that exists. Every plant, the sky, the stars. He said, impossible. He said, no person. I said, yes, I know, but it's not a person. I said, he made everything. He said, impossible. I said, okay, wait. I said, let me finish the story. So I began to tell the story, and I could see him over there going, impossible. And so I began to tell the story, what was created on each day. He'd go, impossible. So finally, at the end of the story, I began to talk to him more, and after Bible study was over, I greeted his dad at the door because I'd helped him find worship. And I said to him, man, we want Brian in class every Sunday. And I said, I'm going to call you this week. I said, I want to tell you some other opportunities during the week. And we began to have more conversation. So I began to really reach out to this single dad and his son. And so they began to come every Sunday. About 6 weeks later. And he's adjusting, he's fitting in better with the other children. And so here's what happens. The next unit we're doing is on prayer. And in my room, everyone gets to pray. We create an environment where prayer is conversation. That's what I want it to be. I don't want to default to just memorize things. I want them to talk to God. And so I pause it and I say, now today we're going to do this game, and everyone's going to get a chance to pray. And Brian's hand goes up and he says, Mr. Tommy, I want to pray, but I've never prayed before. And I say, well, I want to tell you how to do that. And so we walked through how to do that and pray. And I thought, in 6 weeks, we went from who is God, impossible, to I want to talk to him. And to me, this is the challenge. We live in a country where we've made assumptions that children know about God, even if they don't know him. We don't live in that place now. Because culture has changed. And in many ways, it is anti-God. Because you know who God is in America today? Me. People are their own gods. And our challenge today is to help boys and girls connect with God and learn to follow God. Because here's the thing in this world. Sin is not doing bad things. Sin is choosing to do things your way instead of God's way. Okay? It's bigger than doing bad things. And what we want boys and girls to do is connect with God from the very earliest stages. And that's why the work you do is so critical and so important.
Biola University prepares Christians to think biblically about everything, from science to business to education and the arts. Learn more at biola.edu.